Hey guys, welcome. Welcome one more time to Inside Out, guys. I am pumped to be here with you guys tonight. I'm glad that y'all are back after hopefully you had a good long Labor Day weekend, week back at school. Y'all are through like 4 weeks of school now. You're killing it. I've only been in school for like 5 days, so I feel bad for you guys. But y'all are doing great. And again, my name's Jeremy. So if we haven't had a chance to meet, I'm the events director here with Inside Out in Transit. So if you've been a part of my life or you've been a part of Camp 75, we might have crossed paths before. And I'm also a senior at the University of Texas. So love it down there. But I'm pumped to be up here for part 3 of the series that we kicked off a few weeks ago called Subject to Change. And if you haven't been with us here in the series, the whole kind of overarching idea, just to catch you up to speed real quick, is that really everything in our life is subject to change, right? Like if we're guaranteed anything, it's not that everything will be the same or constant. It's that everything from relationships and experiences and circumstances in our life are subject to change. And so that's kind of what we've been talking about, what we've been focusing on, and we're going to kind of wrap that up here tonight. But as we do that, or before we do that, I want to go ahead and give you guys some insight into my life and some areas of my life that have been changing. And so the first one actually is changing, or changed yesterday, is going to be changing in the future, because it's very unfortunate. I was at the Texas game yesterday. We won, by the way. Brilliant performance. If you weren't there, we played super good and crushed Tulsa. So that was great. But after the game, I went over to In-N-Out. It's good post-game food. There's a Whataburger and In-N-Out down on campus. I went to In-N-Out. And then as I left In-N-Out, I went to cross the street. I didn't go to the crosswalk, which is a bad move, so I ran, and I lost my phone out of my pockets. But I didn't realize it for another 10 or 15 minutes because I had these shallow, short pockets on, so I couldn't even feel it. So when I got to the apartment, I realized I had no phone. I went back. It was in the street, and I picked it up, and this is what it looked like. So needless to say, I have been phoneless all day long and probably got ran over 50 times. So yeah, that's going to change. I got to go get a 10 now, I guess, get an iPhone 10 upgrade, but that's going to change. That wasn't super fun, but game was good. But some other things have been changing. Like I said, I started my senior year down at the University of Texas. I have always been a Longhorn fan since 8 years old, which I think qualifies as always. So this is a picture of Jordan and I back in the day supporting the Longhorns. So I'm mean mugging it. Jordan's trying to mean mug it a little bit, but not doing a very good job. So that's us. Then you fast forward 8 years, and then this is the day I moved him into his apartment. First day of college. So yeah, that changed and all that. Which is good. And then next picture you would think I would show would be the day that I moved into my apartment at UT when he was super helpful and helped me move in. But we don't have one of those pictures because he didn't help me move into my apartment because that's just the kind of guy that he is. So that's all I've got with that. But new season down at UT. I just moved into a house a couple weeks ago that has 7 guys in it total, 6 other guys. It's nuts, but I absolutely love it down there. Another kind of change for me over the last couple weeks is I went back to kind of a long-distance relationship. So I've been dating my girlfriend, Kendall, for close to 5 years now, but she is an Aggie, so she Texas A&M, yeah, so that's her. We had to go on some trips. So it's great, but trying to transition and all that. This is a total side note that has nothing to do with today's message, okay? I just want to qualify that, but I want to say something just because I don't get to be up here much. It's just been really helpful to us. If you're dating someone, or you like someone, or you think you want to date someone, no matter what grade you are, before you do the whole college thing, I would recommend picking colleges by yourself. Don't pick your college because of the person that you're dating. When we did college back sophomore year, we sat down, we were hey, we're not going to talk about it. She went and toured, I went and toured, we came back. I was where do you want to go? She said A&M. I said, okay, we're done. Just kidding, I didn't say that, and it's been great. I was cool, I want to go to UT, and it's just worked out so well. And not that we figured it out, but we just have personally a lot of friends that did the whole follow your boyfriend, girlfriend to college, and it has not worked out well. So like I said, that has nothing to do with this. I just thought it was a good time to share just a personal piece of advice that has nothing to do with tonight. So I'd recommend that, but it's been great. The other thing that's really cool, it's kind of a change for me right now, is so throughout August, I got a super cool opportunity to go on different trips, visit a lot of different places. But the problem for me is that I ended up saying the oh, I'm on vacation thing in terms of what I ate for like a month. So like the entire month, I was like, I'm on vacation, I can eat that, I can drink that, it's fine. So I just kept doing that. And by the time I got back at the end of August and I stepped on the scale, I was the heaviest I have ever been in my entire life. Like I had never weighed that much and I had not been working out. Like it was not like the good kind of weight. But what Kendall would do to try to like keep me healthy is like she'd comment on it every now and then, like, do you really want to eat that, or whatever. By the end of the month, she'd just stop talking. She would just like poke me in the side and laugh. That's like all she'd do. And what's like amazing is I've heard my sister-in-law, Emily, would do the exact same thing to Jordan. And like, I just don't know where they get that. Like, that's not okay. You can't do that. Girls, you can't do that. Like, it's not okay. And maybe it's like worked. It's definitely helped in motivation, but you just like shouldn't do that. So it's been fun. That's been changing. And then the last thing I just want to share with y'all that changed for me about 4 or 5 months ago is I got a new car. And I want to share with you like why I got a new car. So this is a picture of me in, I think, October of 2013 when I first got my car, sweatpants and Clarks, and it's great. So that's me. This was the first picture I ever took of my car. And this is the last picture I ever took of my car, right here. And that's my really good friend, Carson. And she had to borrow my car in March, so she took the car. Then someone cut her off. She got in some road rage. She flipped the guy off. He ran her off the road, and she ended up totaling my car in March. So I'm just kidding. She actually didn't get any road rage. There wasn't any flipping off, but she did total the car back in March, and so I got to upgrade to a Mazda 6. And Carson and I are still friends. She was the one I was with last night when I shattered my phone, too. So I feel like there's like a common theme there, like my personal property. But yeah, it's all good. So I upgraded, and it's great, and that's it. That's just some stuff that's been changing for me in my life over the last couple of months or so that I wanted to kind of give you some insight on. But I'd be willing to bet that some things in your life have been changing too, right? You guys just kicked off a new season of school, new grade, probably brought some new friendships, new schedules, new routines, new jobs. There's all kinds of new and there's all kinds of change going on in your life right now. But whether you're aware of it or not, there's those kinds of changes that are going on, but there's also something else that I want to spend some time on for a couple of minutes, just sharing with you guys. There's a lot of change happening kind of as a culture or happening as a society right now. There's a lot of change happening, and what I mean by that is we are growing up in a generation where we are experiencing monthly, weekly, or daily change, and we are seeing organizations, we're seeing the corporate world, political world, all these different kind of movements intertwined in one, and we're getting to live right in the middle of it, right? If you're on social media, you couldn't have missed this ad this week, right? You saw this somewhere on social media, on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook, right? And I'm not here to comment on this, right? I'm not here to say like, I'm for it, I'm against it, you should support it, why did Nike do it? I'm just commenting that things are changing, right? That there is a different political, social kind of culture that's being mixed, and we're living right in the middle of it, right? Our president is the first political figure ever, president ever, that had really no official political experience before, now holding what some people consider the most powerful office in the world. Right? That's different. That's new. That's something that we haven't experienced before. And we're working through that kind of as a country right now and experiencing that. And then technology's changed too, right? If you think about everything on this half of the screen, it's pretty much come together over the last like 15 to 20 years, or at least come into widespread use over the last 15 to 20 years. And I'm a technology major down at the University of Texas in information systems. So every single day I'm using brand new technologies that are just changing so fast. It's absolutely incredible. So the reason that I shared all of that was to say that everything around us in some way or another is changing, some on massive scales and some on very personal scales. But in week 1, Jordan shared this equation with us, and I want to come back to the equation that he shared. And here's what he said. This is from a book that our leadership team has been reading here at North Point called Leadership Pain. He said that change ultimately equals loss, right? When something changes, we lose something. We lose some comfort. We lose some stability. We lose something, right? That's what change. And what comes with loss is pain. I think most people would agree with that. When you lose something, when you lose someone, there's a lot of pain associated with that. So you kind of do the transitive property there, and you get to change equals pain. right? That change along the way equals pain. But there's one part of the equation that Jordan intentionally left off in week 1 that I want to bring back and introduce to you guys because I think it's going to be a good jumping off point for our conversation here tonight. And the part that he left off was this right here, that growth ultimately equals change. Growth equals change. So if growth equals change, then it can kind of change the equation to look like this. Growth equals change, change equals loss equals pain. And finally, the final equation that I want to leave us with tonight, or to start our conversation tonight, is this, is that growth equals pain. Growth equals pain. And we kind of dove into this a little bit a couple of weeks ago. But it's the idea that anytime we grow, anytime we change, like if you think about physically growing up, there's growing pains associated with that, right? But anytime there's emotional growth, spiritual growth, there can be pain that is associated with that. In fact, I think it's kind of helpful to flip the equation and look at it like this, to say pain equals growth, right? That when we experience pain of some kind or another, ultimately it leads to growth. And I don't know what the pain is for you. Maybe for you, that when you hear pain, for you, you think of not making a team. You think of not getting acceptance, not getting the grade that you want. You think of a breakup. You think of a guy or you think of a girl. Maybe you think of the loss of someone you love. Maybe you think of a divorce. Maybe you think of an abuse. I don't know what that pain is for you. It's different for every single one of us. But when we experience pain, ultimately, at the end of the day, it leads to growth. And I think most people in here would agree with that. And I think if you don't agree with that, it might just be because enough time hasn't passed for you to be able to look back on and observe and identify the growth that you've experienced as a result of that pain. But what I want to do here is I want to qualify this statement a little bit, because a lot of times pain equals growth. It doesn't feel like that. It doesn't feel that immediate. It feels more like this. It feels more like there's a whole lot of steps to get from pain to growth, right? And if you're someone who has experienced pain, which I'm going to go ahead and say 100% of the people in the room here tonight has experienced that on some level, whatever that definition is for you, then you would likely agree with this, that there's a lot of steps to get to growth. And so tonight, for the sake of this conversation, I don't want to pretend like I can give us all the answers of what it takes to get from there to there. I don't have all of those answers. In fact, a lot of this conversation is answered through a very frustrating answer of life experience. A lot of this conversation of getting from pain to growth is about the experience you have with feeling that and processing it and moving forward. But there's some things that we can learn and help us in kind of a framework, and that's what I just want us to focus in on tonight. And specifically this first step. The first step, the very first thing in the process of taking us from a painful experience, emotion, or feeling and moving us to a place of growth. And so that's what we're going to do in a minute. But before I get to that, I want to share with you guys 7 different ways that I personally deal with pain. There's 7 ways that I deal with it, and these are not healthy, and they're not helpful. And they're natural, maybe, but they're not helpful. So I just want to see if you guys can relate to some of these when it has to do with dealing with pain. The first one is this. I find myself running away from things, right? When I experience a painful experience, relationship, circumstance, confrontation, right, I find myself moving away, not towards. I find myself kind of pulling in, saying, hey, I'm not going to engage in the mess. I'm not going to engage in the hard conversation. I'm going to head the other direction. Second one, I start backing out of relationships. Rather than being a part of my community, my people, my tribe, whoever it is, rather than engaging in conversation with Kendall or my mom or my family, I just start to move away in terms of relationships. I try to push people away as much as I can because I want to protect who I am or protect myself from potentially more pain. I typically find that I make my most impulsive decisions in the midst of pain or confusion. I make the decisions that are not logically driven. I consider myself a fairly logical guy, but I find myself making my most emotional decisions and most illogical decisions in the midst of pain or in the midst of hurt. I don't know if you guys can relate to that. I overwork myself. I don't know if you guys have ever had this, but I have this thing where I will work super, super hard only to ignore feelings and emotions, only to ignore, a hard circumstance in my life. I will fill up my schedule from 6 a.m. until midnight, make sure the only time I'm not doing anything is when I'm sleeping because I want to make sure there's always something masking what's really going on inside of me. Maybe you can relate to that. I complain and that I just want to give up and quit. I go from someone who's hard charging or someone who's motivated or someone who's passionate, and I'm like, why am I doing this? Should I just quit? Should I just give up? Give up on this opportunity, give up on this school, give up on this relationship. Should I just quit? Is it really worth it? That's when I find myself questioning this. A couple more, I compare myself to others more than anything else. I compare myself in a jealous way, like, oh, I wish I had that. I wish, I could have that. Or in like a judgmental way to say like, well, they don't have it as bad as I do. They're not experiencing what I'm experiencing. If they only knew what I knew. I find myself there. And the last one that is most significant for me is this, is I isolate myself. I isolate myself in terms of my relationships, in terms of physically, like I will not go places or not hang out with people. I pull back, but more emotionally, like I will just put like a surface level like bar that says I'm not going past this. I'm not letting other people in beyond this point, and I'm isolating myself. And I do all of those things, and you might do one or two, or maybe all seven, I don't know, maybe you have a different way of dealing with it, but all of those I can just say are not helpful to me in terms of processing painful situations, hard conversations, hard situations, and they leave me in kind of a one-word summary of all of that. They leave me feeling numb. Numb, right? It's like I'm not that high, I'm not that low, I just don't really feel anything. I don't know what I'm supposed to feel. It's like what do I feel in this moment? What should I be feeling, right? It's like this confusion because I don't know about you, but I kind of get in my head. I'm like thinking about what I should be thinking about or like thinking about the feelings I should be having, but I'm not having. It's like, what is this? And it leads to this feeling of kind of being numb. Now, to caveat on that for a quick second, especially if you're an upperclassman, you're a junior or senior, I want to speak to this real quickly because there's an aspect to, as you grow up and as you mature, for the rest of our life, really, there's this idea that we start to emotionally, like this, there's an idea kind of studied or research called feeling appropriately. Feeling appropriately. And what that means is in certain situations, you should feel in an appropriate way. And what that looks like for us is what I'm saying, if you ever feel like, hey, that used to get me super excited, but now I'm like, why didn't I get that fired up about it? Or I went to camp 3 years ago, and I have that first camp experience in my head, but I just can't like recreate that. Like, why don't I feel the exact same way? And it's because as we grow up and mature, we're feeling appropriately in different situations. It doesn't mean you're less passionate. It doesn't mean you've less purpose. It just means that your feeling is being expressed in a different way, and that's not what numbness is. I just want to clarify that that's not what numbness is, but what numbness is numbing in all of the ways that I just shared and all of the other ways that are out there saying, I have been hurt, I have felt pain, I have experienced something I don't want to experience, and so I'm going to shut off, and I numb the dark, and then ultimately I numb the good feelings as well. And so tonight, before we get to small groups, what I want to do is I want to dive into uncover what we can do in that very first step to move away from the unhealthy reactions, to move away from the numbness and move towards healthy actions and what I consider to be the very first step to ultimately getting to growth. And so to find out what that is, I just want to take a look at real quickly 3 examples of the greatest leader of all time and how he dealt with and processed emotions. And the greatest leader of all time is Jesus, and I just know that because when he was here on this earth, he was here for 33 years, but for 3 of his years, he had ministry, and he had followers who were just attracted to him, followers who believed what he did, followers who didn't believe what he did, people who were nothing like him, liked him, right? And so I want to take a look at what he did and how he processed his emotions. And I think, regardless of your view on Christianity, on God, or on who Jesus is, I think we can take these practical steps and move in a better direction as a result of them. So the first one we're going to take a look at it to kind of just paint the picture really quickly is what's going on here is Jesus is in his very last days. He's on the verge of being handed over to the government, and they're going to go and put him on a cross in a couple of days, and he's going to have the weight of the world, like the physical weight, the spiritual weight of the world on his shoulders, right? And so he has an incredible responsibility, and so he is overwhelmed. Like he is understandably completely overwhelmed. And so it's in this moment that he goes to this garden. It's called the Garden of Gethsemane. He takes a couple of his followers with him when he's completely overwhelmed, and he begins to talk to them. And this is what he says. He says, "Then he said to them, 'My soul is overwhelmed with sorrow to the point of death. Stay here and keep watch with me.'" He says, "My soul," he's not like I'm about to die in a couple of days. He's like, right now, in this moment, in this garden, I am so overwhelmed and so stressed out, I could die right here. He's so overwhelmed, and it goes on to say this in the next verse. It says, going a little further, he fell with his face onto the ground and prayed, "My Father, if it's possible, may this cup be taken from me, yet not as I will, but as you will. Jesus is standing there, he gets on his knees and he's like weeping into the ground. And he's like, God, if you can take this away from me, this responsibility away from me, if there's any other way that we can do this together, then would you please do that? And again, ultimately it's your will and not mine. But this Jesus, right, is incredibly emotional in the midst of how overwhelmed he's feeling, right? We get to see him feeling incredibly overwhelmed. And he's doing something here that I want to pull out, I want to highlight in just a moment. But first, I want to look at this same situation, just written from a different perspective, a guy named Luke. And here's what it says in Luke. And being in anguish, he prayed more earnestly, and his sweat was like drops of blood falling to the ground. Jesus is there praying, and theologians and scholars would say like the amount of stress that he was experiencing could literally bring on a condition that would cause him to sweat blood in this moment, that it wasn't just like a metaphor for what he was experiencing. So he's so stressed out, right, that he is sweating blood onto the ground. So we see Jesus when he's overwhelmed, we see Jesus when he's stressed, and then the last emotion I just want to look at is we back up one chapter. We get to see Jesus really, really frustrated. He's mad. And he's mad because there's a temple and the people have turned the temple into a marketplace, into a place to trade things, into a place to sell things. That wasn't what its original intent was. And so they're frustrated, or he's really, really frustrated with what they're using it for. And this is what he does. He shows up. Jesus enters the temple courts, drove out all those who were buying and selling there. Then he overturned the tables of money changers and the benches of those selling doves. Okay, so what's going on is Jesus walks in, he starts trashing the place. Like it's a whole setup, like they got all their little things out, their stuff that they're selling. He just trashed it and said, this is not what this was created for. This was created for a different purpose, and he's frustrated, and he's ultimately establishing a church that will be a place of community, love, and acceptance, but not as a place to go and kind of meet their selfish needs and desires. And we see Jesus super angry. And in each of these situations, there's two kind of really simple things that we see that I just want to pull out as we wrap up tonight. The first one is this: Jesus felt his emotion. Jesus felt his emotion. That might seem like simple or elementary, but what I mean by that is when I have like feelings of anger rising up, when I have feelings of frustration, sadness, sorrow, depression, my first reaction or instinct is to like push those back down. My first reaction or instinct is like, don't go there. Don't let that out. Don't let them see you in that way. Right? That's my first reaction. We see Jesus rightfully, justifiably angry in the temple. We see him weeping, filled with sorrow, overwhelmed, stressed out before he's going to be turned over. Right? He feels his emotions. He's fully human, and he feels his emotions. Second thing is he acknowledges his emotion. Right? He goes to his followers. He's like, guys, I am overwhelmed. I feel like I could die right now. He acknowledges it. He calls it out. He admits that to the people who are closest to him. And so very simply, as kind of bringing this all together, as we come back to our equation of our pain, of our painful experiences, of our painful feelings, ultimately someday leading us to growth, I think the very first step for us to getting there is very simply revealing your feeling. Revealing your feeling. Uncovering, pulling back the layer, breaking down the wall that's been built up of what it is that we're feeling. And guys, I want to talk to the guys in the room for a second, because I know that we have a bad rap for not really engaging in emotional conversations very well, or engaging in conversations about our feeling. And as a guy, for the first 19 years of my life, I just turned 21 a couple months ago, I would say I 100% agreed with that, related with that, and I would say, hey, I can go be good with the people around me in my relationships. I can even grow in a relationship with God, but I'm not going to deal with the feelings that I have. I don't want to talk about them, I don't want to think about them, and I don't want to go there. And I don't have time because I want to get you guys to small groups to dive into kind of the last couple years of my life, but just through a lot of conversations and going to counseling, I just began to have my eyes opened up to an entire new world of how incredibly significant this is, and how incredibly significant it is to begin to reveal what it is that's on the inside, to begin to pull that out. And ultimately, if what's on the other side is growth, I think, what can also be on the other side is healing. So that revealing your feeling is the beginning of healing. Revealing your feeling is the beginning of healing. And I would just add on to the end of that, in a safe way, or in a safe place. If you share it in not a safe way or not a safe place, it can head the other direction. A safe place might be your small group. That might be the place that you can go and begin to reveal that. You might need to go safer than that. There's people here in the room tonight where you've experienced something where sharing something with 5 people or 7 people or 12 people isn't safe enough. And what you need to share needs to be with 2 people or a single person. And this might be true. This might be true. The next slide. There may be information in your life that only a few people should know. There may be information that only a couple people, there may be information in your life that only a single person on the planet should know. But there is no information in your life that no one should know. There is no information in your life whatsoever that no one should know. There should be at least one person, a couple people, maybe it's a group. I'm not sure. Probably not social media. I wouldn't start there. But whoever it is for you, I think that ultimately revealing your feeling can be the beginning of healing. And the way I just want to finish up or wrap this up tonight is just to give you guys like a simple kind of like word picture that was kind of helpful for me. I got one of these, I borrowed one of these Russian dolls. If you guys have seen these things before, you like take them out and there's more and more and more. This kind of was helpful to me in processing this conversation, thinking about it. And I think it's really important. Because ultimately, as we begin this process, right, as we begin the process of revealing who we are, you start to discover like new layers of you that you never knew were there. You start to get to emotions in places that are kind of scary, if I'm being completely honest. You're like, I didn't even know that was me. Like who is Jeremy? Like, I thought Jeremy was a person that like I projected or I put out there, but like I'm feeling things that I didn't even know that I could feel. You just kind of get to this idea that you keep getting closer and closer to who you really are or to who you're created to be. And I think that like for the rest of our life, that this process would be like if we could have like 1 million of these, right? And it was incredibly massive. We just take a layer off every single day and be like, let's take a layer off. Let's take a layer off. Let's take a brick off. Let's get a little bit closer to who we're created to be. I showed this to Jordan earlier, and he's like, yeah, it's like the idea is like, you're going to tell them they're all just like really small people on the inside. I was like, no, definitely not. The idea is that over time, as you begin to take off the lid to who you are, as you begin to pull back the cover on your feelings and emotions, as you begin to take a brick off the wall that you've built up, you get closer and closer and closer to who you were really created to be. And I think that this is a process that takes the rest of our life. And I think the day that we will know who we truly are is the day that we're in heaven. But while we're waiting for that day, I think that we can continue to reveal and reveal and reveal and get closer and closer and closer to who we truly are. So the last thing that I'm going to leave you guys with is this. This week I came across a poem, kind of a letter journal from a French Jesuit priest. And he titled it, Trust in the Slow Work of God. And I'm just going to share the first kind of verse with you. I just thought it was so helpful in kind of processing and instilling a patience in this process of moving from pain to growth, that if you've experienced the pain, you know that it requires this kind of patience. So let me just read this with you. That's what it says. Above all, trust in the slow work of God. We are quite naturally impatient, I relate with that, in everything to reach the end without delay. Goes on to say this. We should like to skip the intermediate stages. We should like to skip the intermediate stages. We want to say like, I felt that, but I'm good. Like, let's just move on. It's like, no, there's steps, there's stages, there's a process, but we like to skip the intermediate stages. We are impatient of being on the way to something unknown and something new. He's like, just be patient. And he finishes with this. He says, yet it is the law of all progress that is made by passing through some stages of instability, and that may take a very long time. He says all progress in life passes through some stages of instability, and some of those instability stages are longer than others. So if you're in that stage, or maybe you begin that stage by revealing your feeling, I want you to know that it is a process, but that this could be one of the best places, or this could be one of the safest places for you to begin that process. Guys, I'd love to go ahead and pray for us, and then we'll head to our small groups. Heavenly Father, God, I'm so thankful that you're here with us today. God, I haven't had the privilege of meeting everyone here in the room tonight, but I know that you know each and every one of them. You know what they're going through. You know that the level of pain that they're experienced or have experienced in the past, God. And I just pray that you would give us the courage, you would give us the opportunity to begin to take our step or our next step in revealing what that is. God, Jesus showed us that the first step is to feel that and to share that with the people that we can trust. And I would just ask that you give us opportunities and ways to do that. God, we love you so much and we trust you. It's in your son's name that we pray. Amen. Guys, y'all are good to head to your small groups, and they'll be up on the screens.